Hello, everybody. Sorry, I'm just setting up I forgot to log into the chat. I gotta get the chat open. Hopefully, everyone's doing good today. I got dramatic lighting today. Look, it's dramatic. Okay. Hey, Matthias is there. Thank you very much. Sorry for being a few minutes tardy today. All sounds good. Sweet. Thanks, Dave. Okay. Dominic, thanks for popping in. Okay. Got too many windows open here. Gotta close some stuff down. All right. Let's see. What don't we need? Don't need that. Okay. Let's see. Just gotta clean up some windows here. Quit some apps don't need running. Okay. Excellent. So, yeah, how's everyone doing today? I've been working up until 3 minutes ago on the new Total CMS stuff. Here I'll just give a quick status. So yeah, licensed servers working pretty well. I'm actually going to be, so far it's been running locally on my Mac, and I'm deploying it online today. And as you probably are aware, I'm going to be starting a hosting service. So this will be the very first website ever ran from my new hosting service. So that'll be kind of fun and interesting. So I've been, working in the past day or so, been working on the deploy and getting everything installed and running and making sure that the interface for you guys to, add websites and all that jazz, if you're going to host with me, all works. So yeah, it's been kind of killing two birds with one stone a little bit. So might take an extra couple day or two for me to get it up and running on this, but I think that's time well spent moving forward. So super excited about that. Better Site Host is going to be the name. Okay. Sweet. So today, I figured, the last few live streams have been, or probably for like 6 months, have been primarily like Total CMS focused, right? I mean, because it's been what I've really been working on. So, but I wanted to maybe give you guys a little break from that and play around with something else. And I think it was Erwin, hopefully you're here today, asked, I don't remember where he asked, but it was probably on the community where he was like, hey, can you explain a little bit about transitions and how we can use animations and stuff like that? And at first I was like, hey, yeah, I'm sure I have a video on that. And I'm sure I've shown this on live streams and we've gone over things, but I never did like a dedicated video for it. And so I was like, wow, well, we got to rectify that. And if you're on the Hangout I think it was last week, I did a kind of an overview. So I'm going to rehash some of what we talked about then. And yeah, we're going to have some fun today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start diving in. Let me go ahead and let me bring up some web pages and share my screen. Oh, we gotta close these secret tabs though. Can't have everybody seeing all that stuff yet. Okay. Talk about a teaser, right? Okay. Let's go to foundationstacks.com/demo and share my screen. All right. So it all starts here at the Foundation 6 demo site. Just kind of, we're going to show off a little bit about what we can do. And we're going to go to the animation tab. And we're not going to go over every animation thing here, okay? We're going to primarily focusing on style transitions, okay? And how we can do very simple little animations very easily using a transition. So as you see, as I'm hovering over a lot of this stuff, we're getting a little hover button, hover blobs, the hover gradient is kind of changing, animated underscores, right? So how can we do all this cool stuff pretty easily? I guess we can also show this on scroll. Like there's an animate stack that lets you just kind of animate things on screen. Okay. And then there's going to be more advanced stuff as well, which we will go into as well. We're going to dive into the swatch pack, and the swatch pack has some really cool swatches that allow us to do a little bit more. Okay. So for example, like this buy now button, okay, kind of has a pretty cool animation there. We're gonna go into here's here. We can show this one, the animate gradient. It's actually very similar to the one on the text on the other page, but there's an animated gradient. What we're going for is, where is it? Here it is. So we'll probably do some toggler stuff as well, which based on clicking on something, I can animate something else. We can also do some hover stuff, right? Toggle on scroll allows that animation to happen on scroll. And then last but not least, we're going to go over transforms, okay? Which allows us to do some really fun stuff. Really? Okay. So I think that's a lot to go over today. If we possibly have time, I might dive into some drift, okay? With the amount that I talk, we're probably not going to get to drift, but I'll show you a sneak peek on what drift does a little bit better or nicer. Okay. But we can do a lot with what's built into Foundation 6. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start playing around with some of these demos here. Okay. So I'm actually just going to open up this demo project. If you didn't know, this entire project file is available for download. And so we're going to go ahead and go to the free downloads. And it is this one right here, Foundation 6 demo project. Okay. So there you go. If you want to open up, it is the project file for this entire demo area. Okay. So I already have it downloaded. So we're just going to open it up. Had a little bit of time, I would have tried to port this project over to Foundation 6. Right? I've tried it a couple times and we're waiting on a couple things, and I think we're almost there, but pretty soon we'll be able to use this in Stack 6. Okay. Let's go to, let's start off with the simple ones, right? We're going to go to, where is it? Animations. All right. So first off, let's just go about, and we'll have the actual page. And we'll go over some simple stuff. Okay. So this is a very common thing that we're going to want to do. And actually, you know what? Maybe before we go into these examples, I should just start from scratch and show you like the basics of what a transition is. I think that could be a good thing, right? So let's do that. Actually, we'll shrink that down, and we're gonna open up Stack 6. Okay, we're gonna go into the sandbox here, and I don't know what I got in here. Let's just delete some of this stuff. Okay. Don't need that anymore. Okay, brand spanking new page. Okay, we're gonna chuck a swatches stack on the page, and you know what? Let's start off really quick with just this container. Okay, so let's give this container. I'm actually we'll give it a height. Okay, actually, here what we'll do is we'll create a second container inside of this one just so it looks a little bit nicer. Okay, so there we go. We're gonna do that, and just for fun, I'm gonna make it a simple container, and let's give it a BG black. Okay, background. Actually, no. Here, let's use all swatches. I'm going to try not to use utility classes. Let's give this a box. I'm not feeling very creative today. So it has a custom class of box. Okay. And let me go ahead and turn on. I know you guys like my little cursor doodad here. Okay. So here we go. Classes of box. Okay. So I just added a box class to that. Okay. And just for fun, we'll go ahead and say it's a box up here. Okay. Cool little tip. if you're ever, this title field is available in most stacks. And I find it quite nice to put like the classes that I add to something, just plop it in that title field. So as you're kind of looking down the page, you can maybe see what classes are added to something. So yeah, kind of a cool thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and style this box. Okay, so let's just give it a background. Okay, so something really simple. Okay, we're just gonna do box. Okay, and we're gonna do a color. And here we'll do blue. Okay, and for fun, just to make it look nice, let's go ahead and give it a border. Okay, as well. I'm gonna make a box, and let's do simple. We're just gonna do all sides. We'll do like 5 pixels. Okay, and make this color simple. Just make it kind of gray. Why not? Okay, just so it kind of stands out from the simple, and we want solid on all sides. And let's give it a border radius too. 10 pixels, why not? All right. Now if I preview this, the all right, there we go. There is no content. Okay, so let's just give this a height as well. So we're just gonna add a height swatch. Okay, sorry, we're just gonna set all this up. Boom, 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 box. Height setup simple. Let's just make it 256 pixels tall. Why not? Box height 256. Actually, here, let's do like 50% browser height. There we go. There we go. All right. So here we go. We have a box. Why is that top padding so ginormous? PY64? Not sure why that is so big. Oh, I know why. Let's just go into here and sorry, just give me 1 second. We're just gonna hide this stuff here. Oh, and this already has the PY. That's why it's so big. All right. Let's just remove that. All right. That actually was what I wanted. Sorry, I forgot that this project had a layout. Okay, which yeah, I just hid this one. All right. All right. So now we have our box container. Okay. As you see, there it is. It has a border. Okay. And yeah, it's blue. It's 50% the browser height. Okay. So let's say we wanted to, on hover, we want to change the background color. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's move this background swatch just over here so it's all, oops. All right, there we go. Copy paste that just so it's right next to each other. And what I'm going to do there next is I'm going to go in here and say hover. So when on the box, when I hover over it, okay, let's change the background color. So let's make it green. Okay. So now when I hover over this, it goes green. Okay. But now if you notice, it goes green instantly. Okay. And what if we wanted to add a transition from one state to the other? Okay. So that is what the transition swatch is for. Okay. So what we're going to do is in transition, what we're going to say is whenever, basically what is a transition? Now this is just a straight CSS transition. Okay. And so what this swatch does is it basically says, hey, when any of the styles for, in this case, the class box, when any of the styles change, I don't want you to change them immediately. I only want you to change them over time. Okay. So it's a very simple way of creating animations. So by default, it's going to animate all properties. Now, if we wanted, we could say only animate the border or only animate the background or so on and so forth, right? So you can specify a specific property that you want to transition. But in this case, we're just going to set it to all. Okay. It's just the simple thing to do. And I do have to say, I think I have the default of this actually set quite high. I think back in the day, it was kind of cool to have slower animations to kind of show people that, hey, this thing's animating this take a long time. But now I think people want faster animations. When you have a faster animation, it makes your website feel faster, and it just makes things feel more responsive. Okay, so I'm going to recommend a 300 millisecond or maybe even faster. Play around with it, but definitely not 1,000 for most things. I think a much faster animation will make your website feel faster to somebody. Okay, so something to keep in mind. Now you can add a delay. We'll keep this at 0, but if you wanted it to have a delay, you can hover and then delay for a certain amount of time and then animate. Okay, and then these easing effects. The easiest thing to talk about these easing effects is think about. I had an example. I have a demo of the easing somewhere, and I can't think of where it is now. Nope, that is not what it is. Easing.net. Okay, so this is a kind of a chart of what all of these are. Okay, and essentially think of it as a timing curve. Okay, so if we look at, let's go ease. Okay, essentially there's going to be things called ease. There's an ease, which is kind of a linear. We have ease in, ease out, and then ease in out. Okay, and let's look at some of the examples here. So here's an ease in. Okay, and what you might notice is that starts kind of slow and then gets faster. Okay, here in an ease out timing curve, it starts faster and then finishes slower. So it's like you start fast, slow. Now, for an ease in out, it basically starts slow, gets faster, and then slows down at the end. Okay. So, and how does the whole quart and quint and expo and all that jazz? It's just variations of that curve. What's kind of cool about this site is it kind of gives you that little, if you watch this little drop on the side, it kind of shows you the same timing and how it works for each one. Okay. So anyway, so that's how ease in, ease out kind of work. My favorite, I tend to either go I don't muck with too many of these. I just go straight for ease in or ease out or ease in out. I just keep it simple. Okay. A lot of times you'll learn kind of maybe which one you might like, and that'll just turn into your go-to animation. Okay. You probably want to make sure that it's kind of similar for all of them though. Let's go ahead and use an ease out. Okay. And let's preview that now. Okay. So now when I hover, you'll notice that the transition is not immediate any longer. Okay. It has a nice 300 millisecond transition from the blue to the green, which is really nice. Now, as I said, we can animate anything. Okay. So for example, if I wanted to add an opacity, okay, we can go ahead and add an opacity. Let's say on hover, I wanted to make this 19%. Right? Oops. Did I box hover background? Interesting. Oh no, there it goes. So it changed to green and it goes to 19% opacity, right? Again, maybe that doesn't make sense for this particular thing, right? But normally you're going to go the reverse, right? So normally you'll be like not on hover, so on normal, okay? I want the opacity to be 19%. And then on hover, I want it to be 100%, right? So at that point, by default, it's faded, right? And when I hover over it, it becomes opaque, right? So there we go, right? That's probably a more realistic example. But you can do all kinds of cool things with these animations. But I don't see any questions, so hopefully you guys are kind of understanding what a transition does. A transition style transitions and gives a animation between one state of styles to a different state of styles. Okay, and it can be whatever style you want. Right? So really think outside the box on how you can change these things. Excuse me. Right? How we can change those things to go from something looking at one way to something looking a different way. So that's the raw basics of what a transition does. And let's look at some more advanced examples, okay, to kind of, maybe spark your curiosity. So let's look at here. So here I have a header, okay, there, this header here, when I hover over the image, it shows an overlay and the header, okay, some text. So how do we do that? So here I have a one column. And inside of that one column has a background image, which is the image of the Golden Gate Bridge. Inside that one column, we have a header. Okay. So let's look at the styles for that. This swatches area has styles for multiple things. So I think these are all the styles for that particular style. Okay. So if we look, the one column, okay, has a hero and a hero overlay class. And then the header has a hero header class. Okay. So let's see what we got there. So here we have, we're giving it a height. Okay. So the hero has a height, it has a background image. And then we have an overlay background, which gives it that blue background. Now, if you look, what it does is it gives it a blue background with an opacity of 0. Okay. And then if we look at the opacity of hero header, that also has an opacity of 0. Okay. So again, the default styles here are the hero has a height of 25% the browser height. We give it a background image. We create the overlay that we don't see on page load. And then the opacity of the header is 0, because that's exactly what we see here, right? So as you see, this one column has a height of 25% the browser. We don't see the overlay because it has an opacity of 0. And we don't see the header because that also has an opacity of 0. Okay. So then we need to create another state of this, which is essentially when I hover over it, we want to change the opacity of that overlay, change the opacity of the header. Let's have a look. Okay. So here I have an opacity of the overlay. Okay. So I have hover before, and we're setting the opacity to 70%. So it goes from 0 to 70. And the reason it goes to 70 is because when you hover over it, you still want to see the background image. Next is we're going to change the opacity of the header. Remember, before it was 0, we're changing the header to be 1. Okay. Now, funny enough, this demo is actually a little bit old. Here in this demo, I have a custom CSS selector set to hero header, and then I have hero hover. Okay. We can actually do this better now. We're going to go back to class, and then we're going to say hero. And now we have this cool hover parent option. Okay. So essentially that's the same thing, but it doesn't require that you know any advanced CSS. We could just say because I don't want this to show when I hover over the header. I want this to show when I hover over the parent, which is the one column. Okay. So the one column has the hero class, and when you hover over the parent, I want to trigger the styles on this guy. Does that make sense? Right? Because again, when I hover anywhere over the parent, I want that this header to be displayed. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Next is I just added some shadows to the header. Then here we have two transition swatches. Okay. The first one is on the hero. Okay, on before. Okay, so we're transitioning over the overlay. Okay. So when the overlay gets hovered over, okay, because remember here the overlay is creating hero before. Okay. So that's just something, if you want to animate an overlay, you have to make sure that you set this selector add-on to before. Okay. And then you set the speed and your animation timing function. And then the same thing on transition on the header. So on hero header, we want to do a transition of 1 second. Okay. And that's how we accomplished that. Kind of jumped a little bit into the deep end with that overlay background. Okay. But hopefully you guys kept up with that. Okay. Let's look at something that might be a little bit easier. Okay. And that's this hover button. Okay. So notice when we hover over the button, it goes from kind of a transparent background to a solid background. But not only that, the button moves up. Okay. So let's see how we can do that. Let's see, where is cool button? Excellent. Here, let's hide all these other ones so we don't get distracted. All right. So here we have our button. Okay. And it has a class of cool button. Okay. I do have a radius defined on it, but essentially that's it. Okay. Let's go ahead and have a look. So what I've done here is I've set by default, the background is going to be transparent. The border it gives it an orange, make sure we have an orange border on that with a transparent background. And then the font color is orange. And then let's see. Oh, that's getting into the hover styles. Okay. Oh, and then here, let's organize this a little bit better. And then we have a margin top of 4 pixels. Okay, that's actually important. Okay. Then we have 4 different styles on hover. So when I hover over the button, I want to make the background orange. 1 second. Sorry. Gardener's here. Dogs go crazy. Drives me nuts. Okay. So when we hover over the background, or when we hover over the button, we give it a background of orange. And then we give it the same border, essentially. Actually, you know what? Does this border change at all? It doesn't. I actually didn't even need this at all. Because, yeah, the style doesn't change. Does it? Do I need different? I don't. It's the same exact style. We actually don't even need that. Okay. Font color, though, changes from orange to white. Okay. Because obviously before we had orange color and we wanted white color. Okay. Now on margin here, I'm changing the margin from top of 4 pixels to top 0 and bottom 4. And what that does is that makes the button move on hover. Then ultimately we have a transition that's set to 500 milliseconds, ease in out. So what that does is, again, on hover, and let me turn off my little thing here so we can see the animation. Okay. So when I'm hovering, it's again, we're changing the background color to be orange. We're changing the font color to be white. And then we're moving the margin from the top to the bottom, which makes it look like it goes up. Pretty cool, right? Jeff's asking about before. I will go over the before element in a little bit. Okay. I should have started with a simpler example like this hover button. Okay. We'll go over before in a little bit. Okay. We're already a half hour in, and I still have a lot to go. Okay. I'm gonna go a little bit faster now. I think you guys kind of get I went pretty slowly on this button. Hopefully you guys understand that, right? Let's look at the blob really quick. Okay. So here is a blob. The blob is just a one column. Okay. And we have the class on it is blob hover. Okay. And essentially what we're doing is it has a gradient background. It has kind of a complex border radius setup, which gives it that blob feel. Okay. And then we have a different radius on hover. We give it a height, shadows, a width, and the transition. Okay. Essentially, the only thing animating here is the rounding. Okay. So we're going from one rounding state to a different rounding state on this blob. And that's all we're animating. Okay. If you want to analyze how that's done, you can go ahead and play with that here. Okay. Again, we have access to this demo file. But yeah, the only thing changing here is that border radius or the rounding swatch. That's it. Okay. Gradient header. Essentially all this is doing, I'll give you a quick rundown is, a lot of people don't know how you can actually do this. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much. Okay. But, inside a background swatch, now inside edit mode, it doesn't work. Okay. But if you look at this background swatch, it has a clip of text only. So in edit mode, it looks like the background's getting added to the background of the header. But when you set the clip to be text, what it does is it makes the text that background. Okay. So that's how we can actually get gradient text. Okay. Now in this one, when I hover over, I'm actually animating that background. Okay. So if you look here, I'm going from this gradient to this gradient in the text. So it's going to animate that gradient. Pretty cool. Right. So that's all the magic is there is, this is essentially just animating from one background to the next, but we're using this clip feature inside the background swatch for text only. Okay. So there we go. Here's a common one, cards, super simple. When I'm hovering over a card, I just want it to move up a little bit. Okay. Very similar to what we did with the button. Okay. Where I'm assuming all we're animating here is the margin. That's it. So, here I'm going from top of 8, bottom of 0. And then on hover, we're just swapping those numbers, top 0, bottom 8. Now, when we move over to the swatch pack, there's a different way I would actually use this. If you have the swatch pack, I wouldn't animate the margin like this. I'd use something called a transform. Okay. But if you don't have the swatch pack, you can animate margins like this to be able to get something to move up and down or left and right. And that's the only thing we're doing here. I'm hovering over this card and all it's doing is changing the border, or I'm sorry, the margin. Actually, it looks like it's possibly the shadows actually animating as well. Oh, it is. So I have two different shadows as well. So I have the default shadow, and then I'm modifying that slightly on hover so that it kind of makes it look like it raises up a little bit. There we go. And the transition here is a second. Again, I think that's probably quite long. Actually, I definitely set that to 300 or 400. Okay. We're going to dive in to that before stuff in the last example more. Okay. Let's go into this swatch pack. And let's go into, we're going to dive into this. Okay, transforms. Okay. So transform is a swatch, okay, and it is in the swatch pack. Okay, and all the transform swatch does, let's go into, let's see, this one is transform square. Let's see, find those. Where is, oh, here, transform square. Okay, here's the transform swatch. What the transform swatch does is it allows you to do these 4 types of well, a lot of times they are used for animations, but you don't have to use them for an animation, right? So here you can move something, you can scale something, you can rotate something, and you can skew something, right? So yeah, these are all squares, and I'm animating them via a transform to these various different states. Okay, so let's look at these as an example. So the transform swatch, if you notice on page load, this square is moved 20 pixels down and 20 pixels to the left. Okay, and that's done with this transform swatch. So here, and again, you don't have to use transform for animate. If you just want to move something on the page, up or down or left or right, the transform swatch can do that. Okay, so here again, this transform is added to that purple square, and it is set to move, and we're moving on the X and the Y axis by 20 pixels. Okay, don't worry about these other ones right now. Okay, so let's look at the other ones. So this one is the scale. Okay, so this one here, if you notice, on page load, it's now scaled at 1.2. Okay, so I scaled the X and Y axis at 1.2. Okay, which essentially makes it 20% bigger. Then obviously the rotate one sets rotate to 20 degrees. And the skew one sets it to be 10 degrees skewed on the X and Y axis. Okay, so again, these transform swatches show the default states on page load for each of those demos. Now, if you look here, I have a single transform swatch. Right? I'm being a little tricky here in that these 4 transform swatches target a box. Okay, and if we look at these, it uses transform square dot skew, transform square dot rotate, transform square dot move, and transform square dot scale. Okay, in the class. Essentially, what this dot whatever does at the end says it has to have both the transform square class and the scale class. Okay, little advanced there. Okay, but a very cool tool, because if we look at this is the transform square. So it has the transform square class and it has the move class. Okay. If we look at this one has the transform square class and the scale class. This one has transform square and rotate. And this one has transform square and skew. Okay, so all of them have the transform square class, but each of them has its own kind of unique class, either move, scale, rotate, or skew. Okay, so here I'm saying target transform square dot move. Okay, I could also just say target move. Okay, that would work, right? I could do that. I just wanted to be a little bit more specific here. Okay. Then now, so here I'm targeting these four are targeting a different style. Okay. But here in this particular one, I'm saying transform square, hover. So when I hover over any transform square, what I'm doing is I'm essentially applying a move, a scale, a rotate, and a skew, and I'm setting all the values to be 0 or the default value, essentially, right? Because that way, when I hover over this is the default location of this square. Because remember, on page load, we're moving it by 20 pixels, but this one resets it to be moved to 0 pixels. Okay, same thing, scale resets to 1, which is the default scale of something, right? So it goes from 1.2 to 1. Rotate goes from 20 degrees to 0 degrees. And skew goes from 10 degrees skewed to 0 degrees skewed. Okay, so I could have created individual transform swatches and hovered over each of these, but I was being a little efficient and only needed one swatch to do all of those. Hopefully that makes sense. Next is a transform, the transition swatch, and I'm just setting it so it's all the same for all the transform squares, and they all have a transition speed of 300 milliseconds, right? See how, like, just to give you an example, a lot of the animations we saw earlier were slower, and these are faster. It's 300 milliseconds. You just feel how they just feel snappier, right? You could even go a little bit faster. So there we go. Okay. I'm going to skip over this one for right now. Okay. And we're going to come back to it. It'll probably be the last thing we do today. Okay. And I'm going to show off these buttons. Okay. And the reason is these buttons, this animation uses a concept that this button uses. And it allows me to only introduce one thing at a time, essentially. Okay. All right. So let's look at this button. All right. Let's look at this particular one, which is cool button vertical. Okay. There we go. So let's look at cool button. Oh, this uses overlays too. All right. So this is the cool button. Actually, here, let's look at, what was this one? All right. Let's look at the just cool button, not the vertical one. And here, actually, what I'm going to do is, let's just get rid of all of the vertical ones, just so we have just what we need for that first example. All right, just so there's one demo done here at a time. Okay. You know what? Let's go ahead and, for fun, I'm going to copy this out. Okay. And let's plop this right here. Okay. And let's rebuild this. Okay. One thing at a time. All right. Actually, I kind of need a new pen because that's an older one. So let's just use, actually, let's just do this. All right, we're gonna make this full width. Okay, and actually, we're just gonna delete all that box stuff. All right. And I'm going to do not publish. So these swatches exist, but they're actually not getting published at all. All right. Oh, interesting. Don't want that. That looks ugly. Okay. So let's go ahead and work on this button. So first off, we're going to go ahead and add an overlay to this button. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move this out to the pen. Okay. And let's preview this. All right. So as you see right now, that purple button now moved to be a blue button. Okay. And that's because what I did is I added an overlay BG, okay, an overlay background that adds an overlay on top of anything. Okay. In this case, normally you would use this for a container or something like that, but here we're using it on a button. Okay. And it works, right? Gives us an overlay on our button. Okay. Next up is we're going to add a border. Okay. I'm actually, buttons normally have a border. And essentially what this does is it removes the border from the button. Okay. So that should, there it goes. So there we go. Now, if you notice, that got rid of that little 1 pixel pink border. Okay. Just so now we have just a blue button. Now underneath that overlay is still our purple button. Okay. Or whatever color that is. Right. So, let's start playing around to get the effect that we want. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a transform swatch, right? Let's see, what's this one do? Transform, this does cool button before scale. Oh, okay. Okay. Got it. So next up, what I'm going to do is this transform swatch here. Okay. What this will do. Now, if you notice, the overlay, okay. Now, if you know the overlay, it's basically, think of it as like a box over, oh, well, I added the transform in there. Okay. It's a box that goes over our button. Okay. Well, but between the text and the button, because it overlays the background only. Okay. So what, if we look at, the overlay background, what this does, one thing that's cool about swatches is it kind of teaches you CSS without having to know CSS. It's a little tricky in that it teaches you, or it tries to get things in your brain. And if we look at this overlay background swatch, we added a class of cool button. Okay. But if you look in this selector here, it says cool button : before. Okay. And this is because overlay background uses something called a pseudo element. Okay. And they're here. You can see them in before and after. Okay. They're a selector add-on. Okay. They're also known as pseudo elements. Think of it as like creating a little overlay on the fly. Okay. And then we're setting the background to that pseudo element to this blue color. Now, what I wanted to do was I want to transform this overlay background because I want to animate that overlay. And I know that it does that because I provide that information for you right here. So in this transform, you'll notice if we were to set this to be none, okay, if we refresh this button is now gone, okay? Because what this transform swatch does is it scales it to 0 on the x-axis only. So essentially, if you look at me, what that does is that takes your button and it goes and it squishes it. Okay, so we have, when you scale something on the x-axis, it's basically going and it's squishing it to 0. Okay, just to show you, let me go back to my screen. Okay, if we scale this to be 0.5, okay, you'll see that that button has been squished to 0.5. Okay, now we don't want to squish the whole button. Okay, what we want to do is we want to squish just the overlay. And actually, for fun, and how do I know what the overlay is? And the overlay, this is something that the overlay swatch is the only thing that kind of does this for you automatically, okay, where it adds this pseudo element. So if you want to animate this overlay, you're going to go over to this button or this swatch, the transform swatch, and I'm going to say the selector add-on to be before. Now you'll see that this selector is the same as this one. Okay, so now I'm transforming this overlay. And let's keep that scale X to 0.5 so you can kind of see what it does. Right, let's preview. So now, again, what it's done is it's compressed that overlay to be 50%. Okay, which actually this kind of could be a cool effect. Maybe it's something you'd like to do. I don't know. Okay, but there we go. So now that overlay is squished to be 50%. But again, we don't want to see it at all on page load, so we're going to set that to be 0. And there we go. Okay, so again, it squishes that overlay to be 50% or to be 0. Okay, so now that our button looks like this, we want to add some hover animations. Okay, and essentially what we're going to do is we're going to untransform that pseudo element or that overlay on hover. So here I set cool button, and then here I have hover before. Okay, this is so when I hover over the before element, okay, or when I hover over that overlay, we want to transform it to be 1 again, which is the default. So we're going from 0 to 1. So let's look at that. So now when I hover over, it goes from 0 to 1. But, okay, I don't want it to be immediate. That isn't what I wanted. Like if I wanted something like that, I would just change the background color of the button, right? So what we want to do is we're now going to add a transition swatch, which adds some animation. So here I'm going to animate, again, cool button, and then we're going to set before because I want to animate that overlay. All right. And here I'm using a swatch called transition multi. You don't really need that in this particular situation because we're only transforming one thing or transitioning one thing. But here you can actually add multiple transitions. Okay. Which I'm not sure if we're going to get to today. Okay. But essentially, it's if you wanted to transform different properties at different times. So let's say you wanted to animate the transform at this, and then you want to animate the shadow at a different timing, right? So it allows you to add delays and timing to different properties. Pretty cool. Okay, but in this one, we're animating just the transform at a speed of 300 milliseconds with the ease in timing function. And that's it. So at that point, we get this cool little effect where it animates it over the animation of the scale from 0 to 1. Pretty cool. Okay. So, Jeff, hopefully that answers your question about the before element. Okay. And it also, another thing that I wanted to do is show you this, that transform X, okay? Because we're gonna be using that in that more complex animation option. Okay. Hopefully everyone's kind of following here. All right, we're going to go ahead and let's just trash that. And I kind of like this rebuilding approach, so we're gonna do that here. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it there. Okay. And then we're going to go and find the swatches. For that. And we're going to set that up over here. All right. And just for fun, we're going to set up all right, we're gonna set up 2 swatches and hover swatches. All right, and let's go ahead and add in. We're gonna add in a pen up here. We're gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna say do not publish full width, and we're gonna do all of these. Oh, those are the hover effect ones. That's fine. Let's just drag those in there. Whoops. Oh. Option A doesn't work inside Stack 6 yet. Okie dokie. Give me 1 second. Let me just move all these into here, get this set up. All right. All right. So those are there. Those are the hover. Oh, I want to move those down here. All right. We're going to ignore the hover ones for right now. We're going to go into here. Let me just set this up. Do not publish for now. Full width. And let's go ahead and set these up. There we go. And do not publish. All right. And kill it. All right. Now I think in one of these I have to, images don't come over. I think I'm gonna have to set up a, doesn't that had an image, right? Yeah, it did. Where is that background swatch? What class is this container? Banner. Oh, did that not come over? Hang on 1 second. Oh, it was that one. All right. I thought this was just hover. Oh, these weren't the hovers. Oh, I got these all messed up again. Sorry. Let's move those around. All right. Those were the hover swatches. And in this one, we need a background image as well, just so we have that. I actually have that same exact image, I think. Just plop that back in there. Voila. All right. So now we have, let's look at our default styles here. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and say do not. All right. So here we're going to move this into the live things. Let's just look at this by default. What do we have here? Right. So here I have my background, okay, and a background color and a background image. That's actually another thing that you guys might not be aware of, is that you can actually apply a background color and a background image in the same swatch, right? And that will give you this effect, kind of an overlay effect, all with one background swatch, which is kind of cool. Okay, so we have our background, right? And then let's look at let's look at the analysis of this. So here we do, we have the banner. Okay, does that actually gives us nothing here? Let's just remove that from the equation because we don't need it in this case. Okay, so we have our container that has the banner class. Okay, and just for fun, let's go ahead and do like I said earlier. We're gonna add that. Okay, so we have a banner. Then inside the banner, we have a one column that has a height of 33% the browser. Okay, that's fine. I think that's all that one column is there for. And maybe add some padding. Okay. Then we have this container, which actually has a negative margin left of 16 pixels. Okay. And what that does is, let's preview this in the browser just so we can have, all right, that brings this header over 16 pixels. That's how these headers are two different levels. Okay. So, in the browser, just so we can have, all right, that brings this header over 16 pixels. That's how these headers are two different levels. Okay. So, well, that's because this one column has vertical align set to middle. Okay. So that's how those are perfectly centered within that one column. If we really wanted to, we could probably take these classes on the container, put them on the one column, and we'd get the same exact effect, but I'm going to leave things as they are for right now. Okay. Okay. So that's the default style. Let's start playing around with some things. Okay. And let's look at, the animations here. Okay. So first you'll notice that I have, a border. Okay. This border, I have a little border on the header. Okay. So that's this particular border swatch right here. where I add a 5-pixel border to the left of that banner, or the banner H. Here we'll notice that I have banner H3. Okay. You can also do this if you wanted. You could do banner H3. There we go. And that's probably how I would do it today. Okay. So banner H3, that gets us the that left banner on page load. Okay. Now you remember, I'm just looking about how things are going to look on page load. Okay. Then you'll notice that I do have to say, I'm going to try to explain this thing in the next 10 minutes or 15 minutes. This probably took me hours to fine tune everything. Okay. So there was a lot of, I don't remember the exact order in which I built this. Okay. There was a lot of tweaking in terms of doing hover effects and then going back and affecting default styles and playing around with things. Okay. So we're going to look at the default state and then the hover state and kind of go quickly through this. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Okay. But yes, don't think that I did this in 15 minutes. I really did. I don't remember how long it took me, but I'm pretty certain tweaking this and making it perfect like that probably took me a couple hours at least, maybe even more. Okay. So there we go. Here, you'll notice that we do have, when we hover, we do have an overlay that comes behind the header. Okay. But we don't see that overlay on page load. And that's similar to something that we saw with the button, right? So this right here creates that overlay. Okay. And it has an opacity on it as well. Okay. And yeah, we can actually here, we'll tweak this a little bit, how I would have done it today rather than that. So I would have done that. Similar concept to what I did before. I had H3 there and banner in the parent class. It's just simpler to do banner and then H3 inside of it like that. That's how I would do it today. Okay, so here, and this is an overlay BG. So if we look, it's targeting the overlay or the before element on the H3. Okay. Then we'll look at the H5. Actually, or what's this one? Oh, this one's just like we did with the button. You remember how we squished that overlay? This transform squishes that overlay so that we don't see it on page load. Okay, same exact concept. It's just scale of X to 0. It squishes it down, okay? And it squishes that down. So let's go ahead and move that down. So that does that now, right? Here, actually, let's preview as we go along, right? So here I have that overlay, okay? But I want to squish it down because I don't want to see it yet. Okay, so let's go ahead and move that. Oops, did I delete that? Oh, there we go. All right, so now I add that transform, and voila, it's that overlay is squished down, but we still have that 5-pixel border. Now I do actually remember playing around with trying to make that overlay peak a little bit, and then instead of going from 0 to 1, it went from like 0.01 or something like that. I just found it better to fake people out and add a 5-pixel border that is the same color as that overlay. Okay. So, yeah, some optical illusion there. Okay. So now let's play around with this H5, which is right here. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm actually changing the color to dark blue, because if you notice on the final version, it is actually dark blue. Okay, so I'm setting the color with just a font color swatch. Okay, then we have an overlay on that as well. Ultimately, we have an overlay that is there that is white. So let's go ahead and we're going to create that overlay. And let's preview. So again, all I've done now is I've changed the font color to be blue and the banner, the overlay for that to be white. Let's preview that. All right. So now, again, we've hidden that we've transformed that overlay on this H3 to be out, But now we have this overlay on this tagline. Okay. Now we don't want to see that on page load, but at least that's what it's going to look like as the finished product. Okay. So let's go back to edit mode. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to transform that overlay. But this time, if you notice that animation, instead of going left to right, it goes up and down. Well, guess what this transform swatch does? Instead of scaling on the X axis, it scales the Y axis to 0, which basically, essentially what that does is it makes the element go like that, right? So it goes like this instead of like this. Okay, so we're scaling it on the Y axis. Okay, sorry for those that didn't like maths in school, but yeah, X and Y. Okay, so okay, let's get back to it. So again, this transform swatch squishes that vertically. All right, and then also what we want to do here, let's go ahead and preview. Okay, so now if you notice that overlay is gone, but I can see this text, and it doesn't look, while it kind of blends into the background a little bit, it's not very readable. It's still there. Okay, so what I did is we just added an opacity of 0 to that header. And now we can get rid of that swatch. Okay, so now we have what our banner is going to look like on page load. Now let's start adding some hover transitions. Okay, so we can start animating those things that we just hid. We animate them back. Okay, so let's hide that, and actually we'll keep it up. Okay, so here's all the hover swatches. So first off, let's go ahead and add in the transform that's going to be the hover state for the H3. Okay, so let's move that in the page, and let's preview that. Okay, and when I hover, you'll notice, okay, that's the hover state that I want. Okay, I know it's not animating yet, but there's the hover state. So on hover, I want that overlay to go from 0 to 1. Exactly what we did on that button, right? Okay, so all it does is just set the scale X to be 1, because the scale X was set to 0 above here. All right, pretty simple. Now let's go ahead and animate that this tagline down here. Okay, we want to show all of that. Okay, so we're going to do a transform swatch on the overlay for the H5. Okay, and that scale Y is set to 1 here, where it was set to 0 before. And then we changed the opacity of the header to be 0. We're going to change that to be 1. Okay, so we'll do both of those at the same time. Let's go ahead and refresh. And now I get, again, we don't have the animations yet, but here I have from the beginning state to the end state. So now let's start working on transitioning from this state to that state. And I have to admit, this is definitely going to be a little tricky. Okay, if you notice, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 transition swatches. Okay, some kind of crazy stuff here. And let's do one at a time. Okay, so here we have the we're going to animate the overlay for the H3, which is that orange box. Okay, let's put that on there. Right, and let's look at that. That is going to be, I'm animating the transform. It's going to be a speed of 400 milliseconds and has a delay of 200 milliseconds. Okay, actually, hold on one second. I just realized something. Okay, okay. Bear with me here. We're going to use this one instead. Okay, and I'll explain why in a second. Okay. And if you notice, this one could be a little confusing because it has this hover parent. It's a transition in the hover parent. Ignore that for right now. Let's just look at this. Okay, we're transitioning the transform property at 400 milliseconds. That's it. right? And let's look at that. Okay. Again, this only affects that right there, and that does exactly what we want. Okay. So that handles that animation. And let's look at this one right here. Okay. So this one right here, we want to transition the opacity of the header of the H5. We're going to do that. And if we look, and let's just do both of them. So here is the overlay for that H5 as well. So this is the overlay, and it has a speed of 400 and a delay of 200. And if you look at the opacity, it's a 300 with a delay of 300. All right. Now, why is that? Why did I add delays? Well, it's because I didn't want the animation of this to happen the same exact time as this. So essentially, the delay of this happens as this is animating. So we kind of get a nice fluid animation where this is animating and where it's about 200. So it's about 50% in, because remember, this one is 400 millisecond animation. So when this one reaches about halfway, this one starts animating because we had a delay of 200. Now, I'm delaying the transition of that white overlay by 200 milliseconds. And then the opacity of the header itself is 300 milliseconds, right? So essentially, while this white one is halfway down, I start animating the text in. I start fading that text in, okay? So again, a little complex here, but hopefully you guys can follow what I'm doing here, okay? Now, if you notice, the outbound animation is not nice. The outbound animation just happens, okay? So remember, to do this in animation required 3 transitions, okay? So what I want to do now is I'm going to transition. Actually, here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off this hover parent on all of these, okay? Because that's essentially what I started with, okay? We're going to do this, okay? So I turned off the hover on all of these, okay? Just so you can kind of see, okay? Animating in looks great, okay? Now watch the animation out. That is, it doesn't look horrible, but I'd love for it to be the reverse of what I animated in, right? So on animate in, the orange animates and then the white comes after. But on animate out, the orange still starts first and then the white happens after. That's not what I wanted, right? I think it would look nicer if the white animated first on the way out and the orange animated last on the way out, right? All right. So essentially, what I want to do is when I'm hovered over the parent element, or whenever I'm hovered over the banner, I want the transition to be this inbound transition, right? So that is why on each of these transitions, I set the hover parent property. Because these transition values are only going to be used when I hover over the banner. Okay. I know this might be confusing. As you guys go and try to rebuild this demo yourself, I think if you try to do this yourself and really understand these settings, I think then you'll understand. Okay. Hopefully. So on hover, I want those animations. So now let's build different animations when I'm not hovered. Okay. So when I'm not hovered, we want the opposite animation. So let's look at the H5. Okay. So the banner for that H5, the overlay, okay, is going to be a delay of 0 because I want that to start first. And a speed of 400 milliseconds was actually the same as it was before. Okay. And then here I want that banner to the header in that H5 to the opacity to animate immediately as well. Now, if you notice here, I want the opacity to be finished before that overlay is fully shrunken down. Okay, so let's move these down. preview. So now when I hover out, those animate first. Okay. Well, we didn't add the hover animation or the non-hover animation for the orange. Okay. So let's add that as well. This one is going to have a delay of 200 milliseconds, which again is half the time that this is. So when this a white overlay is halfway through its animation, the orange overlay is going to start. So now when I hover, this white one is going to start animating. And when this is halfway done, this orange one's going to start. There we go. I really love this animation. It's absolutely amazing. It was a lot of work. Okay. It was probably even more than 2 hours. I said 2 hours. I don't remember how long it took me, but a decent amount of time playing around with all the timing and the effects and all that stuff, right? So, I mean, we did it in 20 minutes. I explained it all, but yeah, this was hours of work, tweaking and playing around and whatnot. So, yeah, a lot to go on here. I see Jeff asked, does the order of the swatches matter? Maybe. Okay. I do want to say yes. The order does matter. I would always try to put whatever style you want to win second, right? So like normally you're going to do hover animations after your normal animations and stuff like that. But yes, the order of swatches matters. And I have a really great video on that. I think it's one of my short videos, like 5 or 10 minutes, on that, on the demo site, I believe. If we go into site styles, I know I have any of the, just a quick note here. If you ever see a video that has these screenshots, okay, those are short videos, probably 5 to 10 minutes. The ones that have these are the live streams that are going to be a lot longer. Okay. I don't recall. Let's see. I'm not going to try to figure out which one it is, but I'm thinking it is probably this swatch selectors. Maybe talks about the swatch order. Yeah, either that or it could be. There was one I did full on like a CSS one. Here. Oh, this one definitely is CSS selectors and ordering and how it all works. It's a long one. It's one of the live streams like today. But Jeff, check out this one, and I go all into the ordering of swatches and how that matters. And there's a lot of caveats that I don't want to dive into now. So check out this CSS selectors and ordering video. Okay. There we go. Okay. Well, guys, that does it for today. I did not get into drift at all. Man, I didn't even get into the toggler. I swore we would get into toggler. Hey, let's get into toggler. Just I'll give you a really quick tour of toggler. I think I did a video on it, but you could do some cool stuff with toggler. I think I did a video on it. Let's see. Did I? Oh, I'm on the wrong page. I do have a video, a short video on toggler swatches. So check out that. And actually I have more of them here. Okay. So yeah, I have toggler swatch. There's a couple of short videos on toggler swatches. All right. But I'll give you a quick tour today. And let's look at the demo first. Okay. So there's two toggler swatches. There is toggler and toggler scroll. Okay. And if you notice here, we have a click demo and a hover demo. Okay. Obviously the click triggers toggler on click, hover triggers it on hover. Okay. And then toggler scroll toggles it on scroll. I won't dive into the CSS that is, or the swatches that are used for all these particular demos. Okay. you can have a look at that. But let's look at how to use these swatches. Okay. Let's look at the toggler demos here. So let's look at the click demo. Now, if we look here, I'll give you a quick rundown. We have this toggler demo, okay? And if I were to add a toggled class to this, okay, we'll see that the style changes, okay, just by adding this class. And that's all done with these swatches up here. We have the default state and the toggled state. The toggled state adds a toggled class, okay? So when I have this toggler demo, when I add the toggled class, it looks different. Okay? So that is the root of how the toggler stack works. Toggler, all it does is it adds a class to an element. So when I add the toggled class to this demo, it makes it look like that. Okay. Again, I'm not going to review all those styles. All those styles are up here. We have the default state and the toggled state. Here's the toggler swatches themselves. Okay. So let's look at the click demo. So here I have a button. Okay. This button has a class of clicker. Okay. So, now I admit that this stack, the settings are confusing until you see what they are, right? Okay. So what are we targeting here? We're targeting toggler demo, which is this container right here. Okay. So I'm targeting that. Down here, toggle class on selector. So what class am I going to add to this? Okay. And as we said earlier, it's going to add the toggled class. Okay. So it's going to add the toggled class to this element. Okay. Now, down here, this is where we set up the trigger. Okay. Here, I set up a class of clicker. And when I click on clicker, it will toggle this class onto this element. Okay. So there's 3 things going on here. Okay. Now, what's kind of crazy is you can actually set the toggle element to be the trigger, right? So when you click this, it makes this guy the trigger. Okay. So, yeah, the trigger doesn't need to be a different element, if that makes sense. Okay. So toggle trigger element. That's if you wanted, to basically, when you click on something, to have toggler toggle itself, essentially. Okay. But with this setup, when I click on clicker, it's going to toggle the toggled class onto this demo. Right? So that's what it adds, the toggled class to styles. Hover is the same thing. Okay. It's the same exact setup. It's just instead of click, you'd use hover. Right? So when I hover over this demo, it's going to add or remove the toggled class from this layout. Okay. Then the toggler on scroll is it's quite different, but the concept is the same. Okay. On toggler demo, I'm going to toggle the toggled class when scroll trigger follows these scroll trigger parameters. Okay. So in here, this 2-column layout is my scroll trigger. Okay. And let's look at those conditions. when that scroll trigger, when it reaches 20% from the bottom, okay, it's going to essentially, well, the end position is where it starts because you're scrolling up, right? So it's 20% from the bottom of the browser and it ends at 80% from the top of the browser. Okay. So what that means is that, let's look here, when it's at 20%, it animates. And then when it's at 80%, it's going to toggle that class off. Right. So even though this says end position, it's kind of where the animation will start. Okay. But I mean, it starts anywhere. So it's the top and bottom position. Actually, maybe I should have done bottom and top instead. Okay. But yeah. So that's how that works. All right. If you've used Drift, these settings should look very familiar because they're the exact same settings used in Drift. Okay. This actually uses part of the library that Drift does to handle this this situation. Okay. So hopefully that that helps you guys out. Shows you some really powerful stuff. Again, we didn't go over Drift at all today, guys. And I'm not going to go dive into it now. Okay. But check out Drift and Drift Pro. It has a lot of really cool animations that you can do. Okay. Yeah. A lot more advanced stuff than what we did with this. This all requires sort of JavaScript and stuff, but you can do some really cool animations that go way beyond what we've seen today with transitions. But with that said, you can go really far with transitions as well. Okay. So yeah, check out Drift. It's a really cool stack. You do a lot of really amazing things with it as well. And hope you guys learned a little bit today. Okay. Let me see if there's any questions that I missed. Does the order of class organizing swatches? Sweet, Jeff. Jeff, you win the ticket today for best questions. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week. See you on Friday at the Hangout, and those are a lot of fun. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that you could think of after we leave today, then, or on the community as well. So take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. Go out there and make your websites great. Bye.